Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Essie Udekbe, and as always, this is Serenity with Essie. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about mortality, and if I may put it bluntly, I'm going to be talking about death. Now, you might be watching and thinking, why is Essie talking about death? And my response to you is that death is inevitable. It is something that we will all experience. At one point or another in our lives, we will all answer to the call of death. The question I'm asking is, whilst we are still here, whilst we still have the privilege of breath, how are we utilizing our time here? How are we making the most of our lives here on earth? Now, before I go any further, let me give a brief definition of mortality. According to the English dictionary, mortality is the state or condition of being subject to death. This definition leads me to believe that regardless of our race, our creed, our status, we all have this condition, and none of us is immune to mortality. How are we spending our time here? And ask. Let me just also quickly say that the focus of today's video is not on grief. I'm not here to suggest 10 ways to grieve, because I believe that we're unique individuals and we respond to grief in different ways. The focus of today's video is to examine our lives, is to look in and begin to sort of rethink the way we live our everyday life. How are we spending our time? Are we making our time to reach out to that widow who tragically lost her husband in a car crash? How are we reaching out to that unaccompanied migrant child living in our community? How are we reaching out to that orphan who cannot afford 3 square meals? What are we doing with our time? A friend of mine once said, take your time, but don't waste your time. Time is precious. Are we living our lives in such a way that when we are no longer here, somebody would say, I wish he was still here. I wish she was still here. Now, if you're familiar with this video, if you're familiar with this channel, you will remember that I always endeavor to use personal life experiences to illustrate the points I make in my videos. Now, last year, June 2019, on the 3rd of June precisely, I embarked on a journey to my home country to visit my father. I had also planned to visit a friend of mine whom I love dearly. But that visit never happened because I procrastinated. I spent time with my father instead. And on the 19th of June, I flew back to England. 2 days later, I got a phone call from another friend informing me that my dearly loved friend Shima had passed. Now you can only begin to imagine the pain and the guilt and frustration that I felt hearing the news. On the one hand, I felt terrible that I had lost a friend. On another hand, I just couldn't walk past the guilt. And believe me when I say up until now, I still carry part of that guilt. I had all the time to visit Shima. I had all the time to spend with her and to say my final goodbye. But I procrastinated. I was reading an article recently and I came across this definition of procrastination and it hits me differently. It says, procrastination is the arrogant assumption that God owes you another opportunity to do what you had time to do. Now, this definition made a lot of sense to me. What are you putting off? How are you spending your time? How are you living your life? Do you live in fear? Do you live in regret? Do you live in guilt of what could have or should have been? What's your purpose here? What's my purpose here? How are we tapping into our actualizing tendency? And by actualizing tendency, I mean the tendency that propels us, the tendency that is innate to every individual that propels us towards doing good, not only for ourselves, but for our community. How are we tapping into that? Now, these are rhetorical questions. I'm not necessarily asking for answers. I'm just highlighting these points to get us thinking, to get us to be in a place where we are able to re-examine how we live our everyday life. Now, this is just, I just thought I should talk about this because I've been putting it off for a very long time because I wasn't sure how people will respond to it because it's quite a sensitive topic to talk about. But I thought I'm going to just sort of make it simple and just really, highlight some points that will set us thinking to sort of make it necessary adjustment to how we live our lives, to how we maintain relationship with ourselves and to people around us. I'm encouraging you today. Whilst I'm not telling you how to be or how to live your life, I'm encouraging you to spend your time, for things that really matter, things that uplift, things that inspire, things that will lift you and lift others. Because the reality is, we do not know when the final bell will ring. And when it does, we cannot escape it. I would also like to say that this video is dedicated to my friend Shima, who sadly, passed last year. I want to say that Shima, I loved you then and I love you even more now. And before I go, let me just say that if you've been impacted by this message in any way, shape, or form, if you have recently lost someone, if you're in the process of losing someone, I'd like to explore your feeling around the situation, please send me a private message. I'll make myself available to offer free counseling, to you or anyone else you feel might benefit from that. So I'm going to leave you here today. I had, planned to speak more about this, but talking about my friend who passed last year, I'm aware of my feelings. I'm aware of the feelings that are coming up for me. So I'm going to stop here today, and I do hope that we're able to take one thing or another away from today's episode. Please remember to like this message, share with your family and friends, and remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. And I do hope I see you next time. Until then, you've been watching Serenity Would I Say. Take care.